Welcome back, everyone. So, in this session, we are going to fix our icons because, as you can see, we had an icon here and we had another icon here. So, we actually have three icons. One is this here, the other one is this here, and the third one is actually this is actually two icons. One with an I and a slash, and the other one is only an I. So in order to have icons in our projects, there are so many packages that we can use. For example, there's one called Fonts Awesome. Exactly, this is something that you can use in your packages. There is IO and icons, and you can also search for top icons, top icon packages for HTML. This is something you can also search and come up with something. But what I usually use in my projects is material icons. And usually UI UX designer, that person is the one who chooses what icon package to use. So if we go to this material icon, these are the icons that we are going to use in our project. And before we can actually customize this. For example, we can customize the weight of our these are fonts, exactly like fonts, because when we zoom in, the quality will not drop because it's a font, it's not an image, these icons. So I'm gonna put this on 500, and there are two ways. First of all, one of them is filled and the other one is unfilled, and this is the grade. You can actually use whatever you want. I'm gonna go with this 200 and this 400. This is what I'm gonna go with, and this is something that I customize. For example, let's and we can search from the icons. For example, let's search this I icon, I slash. These are two icons that we are going to use in our project. So these are two of them, and the other one, the other icon here, is like, it looks like an arrow, but I don't exactly know what this is. So let's go ahead. Yes, this is it looks like an arrow, but this icon, I don't think you can find this exact icon in any um, font packages or icon packages. For example, let's search for arrow. These are the type of arrows that this thing is providing us, and if we search in this, we may not be able to find something like that. I don't think so, because I haven't seen that in any icon packages. So for that specific thing, that we can actually export that. There's something in design, maybe prototype, inspect. We can actually somehow export this, so we can go ahead and copy. There's something, copy as SVG. Okay, copy this SVG. We can go ahead in our images, and we can create a new file here and call it arrow.svg. Create a new file and paste the content that we just copied. So for this one, since I cannot find anything for this in my icon packages, I just choose to download this and use it as an image. So we can go inside our button here, the login here. We can use an img here, and so the source of this img is inside our images and arrow.svg. So we can go ahead, set images and this arrow.svg. Well, the alt, I use arrow, so I do not cover this src and alt and this img because we have already covered them. So let's go ahead and see how does it look like. And the first thing that you notice, the login in and the arrow are not in the same line. So the second thing that you notice, when I hover this, the login will be changed. The color is white and now the color will be changed to black, but it doesn't happen for the image because it is an image. So this is another advantage of using these font packages, these icon packages, because they are fonts, and when the color changes, this will be changed as well. So now that we have used this image, now we see it has actually a problem and we cannot use it like this. Usually the UI UX designer gives every element that we need. So if we are going to use an image, the UI UX designer should give us the white arrow and the black arrow so that we can change it, and that is an extra work. So rather than using these images and all of these, let's delete this img. So let's delete this img, and we are not going to use images, and we are going to use a similar icon in this font packages that we have, these icon packages that we have. So now that we actually went through downloading this, why it's not being deleted. Now that we actually went through these things and we saw why it's necessary to use these material icons, these font packages, anything, this is because they have so many advantages compared to images. One, you can control them by CSS. Two, they won't lose their quality while zooming. For example, if we use an image, when we zoom in or anything, the quality will drop because it's an image. But with icons, that does not happen. So let's first use something similar for this, and I want to use something like an arrow for our what we are going to use. So let's choose one of these arrows. I'm gonna choose this. Okay, so when we are going to choose this, there's actually some links for us that we can use these links in order to attach them to our project, because as you can remember, when we were using this, and do you remember when we added this Poppins font to our project, there were two ways. One, a link tag in our HTML, and two, an import in our CSS. So for this, we can use the HTML code here. We can copy this HTML code and we can paste it in our HTML so that now we have access to that packages. So now that we have access to those packages, we can use this icon like this. It's giving us a hint. So let's copy this as well and paste it in our project, this login, and I'm gonna paste it here. So now that we have using extra content in this, in here, let's actually break our tag so that we have, let's put tab here. So this is more readable and more understandable. The code is cleaner now that we use this extra space in our button. So we used a span, and the class is a material symboled outline, just as the documentation is telling us. And we used a text inside this. This line and arrow notch is what this icon looks like. For example, if we use something else, you can see the text inside it is now table rows. So this is how material icon handles it and shows us the icon. So let's hit refresh, and now it has cached them. Now everything is okay. We need to fix this login in and the icon. They are not in the same line, but thanks to the fonts, now when we hover this, the color of the arrow changes as well. So this is why these icon packages are much better compared to images. Let's get back to our code, and we need to understand something, and that's called positions. Positions in CSS is very, very important, and I believe every front-end developer needs to know that this positioning thing is very necessary. It's something that you do need to understand and you do need to be aware of. First of all, for this positioning thing, we are going to use that for one thing. first of all, to position things in a random place. For example, since we started our HTML CSS course, when we used any tag, we created any tag, all of them are placed automatically and the browser puts them in a right place. Now we can control them a little bit with display, with for example flex display or block display, inline element. We can use margins and paddings a little, but we have never seen something that, for example, to put something in a specific, for example, we are going to say, hey browser, forget about that display and forget about everything. I want my image exactly here. For example, this person image that we have, I want it to be exactly here. I want to control it exactly myself. So, or something else here, you can see we have never seen an element go on top of another element. For example, this logo here is here, the welcome one is here. Never two elements go on top of each other. That's something that we have never seen. But with positions, we can do that. We can accomplish that. We can put something on something else, or we can control exactly where it should be. So this is why we need to use positions. So for now, just let's include these icons in our packages, but for next session, for this visibility is something that we need to use, but for next session we need to position them exactly at the right place. For example, we can put this here. This is another icon, and this is visibility off. This is something that we are going to use, these two. But for now, they both are present here, but we need to first position them and only show them, show one of them. So this is what we are going to fix in next session. But for now, as a warm-up, let's see a little about this positioning thing that I say. We will cover them fully in the next session, but let's, for a warm-up, let's see one example of this positioning thing. So the first thing that you need to know about position is actually a CSS property. And like the other CSS properties, position has so many different values, and one value is the default value, and the default value for position is a static. Okay, and so the position of this is a static, the position of this is a static, the position of this is a static, position of everything is a static. So I can go ahead and select this input here. So I want to control the position of this login that we have here. So in order to control the position, I need to put it inside a HTML tag, because otherwise we cannot select that and apply some CSS properties to that. So login in, this is the text, and let's copy that. So I'm going to press F2 on this btn and paste that span that we have here. So this is login in, the span is created, and now this is it. So now we have a span, so we can control it and apply some CSS property. So the first thing that we want to see to understand the position relative something. When we set the position of something to relative, at first glance nothing happens, but what is actually being done with position relative is that we now can control that with some CSS properties. There are 4 different CSS properties, and that's top, right, left, bottom. Okay, and these 4 values will only be applied to something that the position is not static. For example, I'm gonna set bottom 10 pixel. This means go ahead and have a 10 pixel space from bottom. It's kind of at first looks like margin. Let's use it 5 pixel. It looks like margin. You may think it's margin, but it's way different with margin. Because when we use margin, it actually pushes the elements around it. What do I mean by that? For example, let's check this login that we have. If I give it a margin from top. Okay, give it a margin top, or let's say margin bottom is a better example here. If I give it a margin bottom, for example 50 pixel, so you can see it moves the other items around it. Okay, but if we use position relative, and say from when we said margin bottom 50 pixels, it has a 50 pixel space from bottom, but for now we can also say that top 50 pixels. It means go ahead and have a 50 pixel space from up, but now it's very different from margin. Is now that we are using position relatives, the position is non-static, is not something static. The top 50 pixel will be applied to this, and we see that it has 50 pixel space from the above, but it's not pushing everything below it. So that's the difference that it has with margin. And if I uncheck this position relative, you see that this top is not being applied because the top 50 pixel is meaningless for something that has a static position, and the default position of everything is static. So that's why we need to specify position relative. So one thing that we learned was position relative, and we can use this position relative for our code. So we can go here, get back to our code, this login in. Where was that login in? This is it here. So I'm gonna go here, create a span, write this login in here, and give it a class, and I call it btn text. Okay, and the btn text is something that I'm going to select the .btn text, and I'm gonna give it a position relative, and the position relative after that I'm gonna give it a bottom 5 pixel. So now the login in is fixed now. Okay, so this is login in, and now the position. So we now know what position relative is, but there are other positions that we are going to understand in next session. This positioning thing is something very important, and you do need to be aware of and know it. Okay, so this is it for this session, and again we do not have a sum up part, because the only new thing that we learned was this position relative, and this is something that we are going to cover in more depth next session. So this is it. I hope to see you in next session.